when it comes to expanding to a new market, making sure you're ready. So you nailed your home market first, and then really do the groundwork to understand how that market is different from the one you've been successful in.
Welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, product localization, and global expansion. I'm Caterina from Undertow. We create and manage localization programs for B2B SaaS companies so they can grow globally. Today, our founder Nicola Calabrese sits down with Filippo Irdi, a seasonal B2B SaaS marketing leader specializing in demand generation and product marketing to scale growth in European scale-ups. Together, they will share practical strategies, cultural intelligence, and operational tips for SaaS companies aiming to expand successfully across Europe. They will also explore how to add localization to your international expansion without putting extra pressure on your teams, combining high-level strategy with actionable advice and real-world examples to help your growth with confidence. So, let's dive in.
Hi, Filippo, and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Nicola. I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's really a pleasure to have you here. And we're going to talk about international expansion, how it works with teams, how the expansion in Europe for B2B especially works. But before we jump right into today's topic, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name is Filippo. I'm originally from Italy. I'm working in the Netherlands since a few years now. I work in marketing with scale-ups, specifically scale-ups that have a B2B SaaS product. And at the moment, I work at OrderChamp, which is a marketplace that connects brand and wholesalers with retailers.
And given your experience across European markets, what do you think are the most critical mistakes you have seen SaaS companies do when they attempt to expand internationally, especially when in the B2B context?
Yeah, I think the one things that happens very often, it's being successful in one market and then expecting that success to be replicated, just copying and pasting the strategies or the tactics that have been successful in your home market. I've seen that very often. This is actually, it's almost never the case, especially in Europe. I mean, you see that every market has different dynamics. And this is a big mistake because you invest a lot of resources expecting to have the same results. You don't have it. It can be very draining. I think the things to look at when it comes to expanding to a new market is, making sure you're ready. So you nailed your home market first, and then really do the groundwork to understand how that market is different from the one you've been successful in.
And if you were to approach building a localization strategy, so entering in a new market in Europe where there are different business cultures as well, how would you approach this? Where would you start from, apart from obviously having, let's say, website translated or things like that? What else would you look into to make sure that it's a success?
Yeah, so what I try to do when it comes to a multi-country go-to-market is find a success case in that country. So if your product solves a problem, I think maybe it's even more important than translating the website. Find a success case in your market so that your potential customers in that market can look at another company that it's maybe their competitor or another company that has succeeded with your product and build a case study out of it, put it on your website. I think that this is one of the most important things. If there is more than one, even better. But the more successful cases, I mean, it sounds obvious, but the more successful cases you can show in a country, the better. So this is one thing that I would do. And that the other, one aspect is, of course, translations. Translation can be crucial for some countries and not so important in others. For example, of course, if you have to go to the Nordics, if you're from the Netherlands and you have to go to the Nordics, maybe you can get away with it with English. Going to Italy, Spain, Greece, all different, France, it's all different stories. So for some countries, you need your content translated. And then understanding what are the market dynamics. depending on the industries, there can be very different dynamics across markets. For example, in my previous role, I was working in a engineering company. Well, it's something called condition-based monitoring, where we were selling a software to water companies, and water companies can be very different. In the UK, the water market is private, but in Italy is public, or at least partially public. Same in Spain. So these dynamics really impact how people buy, and therefore also researching and understanding what are the market dynamics that influence the buying process is very important.
And with AI, translation technology is obviously becoming more and more sophisticated. Like, how do you see these tools transforming internal team dynamics and global expansion strategies for SaaS companies?
With AI, well, obviously, I think there is one side that is really cool. You can go way faster. If you rely only on that, I don't think it's going to work. I think everyone, when we read something that is written by AI without a human touch, we're not at the stage where we can, yeah, I mean, you understand it very clearly, I think. It definitely sped up work. It gives a little bit the illusion that you can do all at once at no cost. I think this for teams it puts pressure on team, because the classic, I think a conversation that every marketer has had is with a CEO or someone who wanna cut costs that is not in the marketing team. Yeah, just put it into ChatGPT and translate it. So I think on one side, it's really cool. You are way faster. You can definitely, if your product is really strong, you can come up with a half decent translation, especially with some language is better than others, I feel. At the same time, the focus is really important, I think. So if you decide to go to the German market, focus is really important. And the expectations towards go-to-market teams, I think, changed. And now it's expected that you go in every market with one prompt to translate everything. It's really interesting. Definitely a lot of workforce added, but also, yeah, the risk that I think the overall quality probably went a bit down.
Yeah, you can still, I think, get the equivalent AI slop, but for translation, like translations that feel weird
Yeah, yeah, and that
and they don't resonate. Yeah.
especially with like ads and expressions, that it can be tricky. But yeah.
Yeah, with marketing, especially, there's like an emotional component to the content as well. So
Yeah.
that's really tricky. Apart from let's say, customization that you have like around terminology, tone of voice.
Yeah, it's hard to translate. If you build multiple ads, for example, that somehow have the goal to tell a story or convey the message of your value proposition, a lot of time translating purely with ChatGPT doesn't work. You need someone to proofread it, but it has also made a lot of things easier. So
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
I think there's always, maybe for companies, 1, 2, or 3 core markets that you want to go after. And these are the markets where you want to curate the translations, because you want to have a quality text ads or whatever. And then maybe you're still going to more markets, but these are not your core markets. So you can just throw something at the wall and see what sticks, basically. And for that is great.
And in your experience, like, what specific relation building tactics have you found most effective when entering new B2B markets with different cultural communication norms? So people obviously communicate in different ways in different markets. What have you found is the best way to figure out what's the best approach?
So what do you mean relationship building?
Like when you're trying to enter a new market, like you're establishing some kind of trust, either
Yeah.
through content or through personal relationship. So how do you navigate that with the differences that we all know exist in Europe from one country to the other?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just chasing a success case. So calling a customer, explaining what you're trying to do, and then just start having a conversation. I don't have like a set list of things that I ask or that I use to build relationship, but it's more like let them explain you what's the value that they find in your product, and then try to build content around it. Most of the time, this is the best way. Yeah, so just having a conversation, I guess.
Sorry to interrupt your listening, but do you want to grow your B2B SaaS in international markets? Because every country is different, and what users value in one market doesn't necessarily matter in another one. At Undertow, we help B2B SaaS companies like yours succeed in their international expansion. We create customized localization strategies that address the unique challenges of each market. In this way, you can effectively attract, engage, and convert customers worldwide. Visit undertowlanguages.com to find out more. And now back to the show. Do you have an example of an experience where some miscommunication or misunderstanding due to the cultural differences actually damaged or slow down a potential deal or an expansion?
Yeah, I have a lot. I think this happens all the time. I can think of two. At some point, I was working for a WhatsApp chat tool, and it was really hard to get into the Nordics. And then we found out that in the Nordics, they don't use WhatsApp. WhatsApp is entirely, or at least in Denmark, it's entirely replaced by Facebook Messenger, which is something that, for instance, in the Netherlands or in Italy, I don't know about Spain, but it's really weird because WhatsApp is so broadly used. Well, in that case, if we would have had a partner and just would have asked, that would have probably been the first answer. Another thing that I can think of is that a lot of countries use LinkedIn, but Germany use Xing. This is also something to be aware about. And if you are in your bubble, something that you might not know. So imagine you build a campaign, create the messaging, create all the ads, allocate the budget, and then you launch a massive campaign in Germany on LinkedIn without knowing that Xing exists or that a lot of people use that instead of LinkedIn. That's a cultural difference that can make you waste a lot of time and money.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big step, a big difference. If you knew, before you allocate resources and budget, yeah, definitely will make a big difference. And for early stage SaaS companies that might have limited resources, what strategic priorities would you recommend when they're considering expansion into new European markets?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is don't think nail your market first. Nail your market first. Wait until you're ready, because chasing 4 different markets without traction has extremely diminishing returns. So I would say nail your market first. See if there's something that you can use to build a case study or to build a bit of a referral loop. If you can validate your product in that market, both with social proof, but also with a nice case study that shows the problem you solve. And try to build this content of success stories as much as possible before you start doing many-to-many campaign, because that's key. At the end of the day, when someone is going to, especially if you have a high contract value, when people that are going to buy from you want to know that there are other companies similar to theirs that have been successful with the software. So I would say nail your market first, and then try to build success stories in that specific country. And if it's a country that is hard to get in, maybe start with some partnership, but be careful copying and pasting the strategies that you use in one country in a different country, because of course it can always work, but yeah, I wouldn't rely on that.
And do you have any tips, recommendation on how to balance the need for hyper-localized marketing approaches in different markets and having a standardized, let's say, global brand message?
Yeah, I think that comes with prioritizing 1 or 2 markets. Ruthlessly prioritize 1 or 2 markets, and then have an approach that is curated, that includes partnerships, where the translations are proofread, etc., in your key markets. And then everything else, you can make it a little bit more standard, a little bit more AI driven. So on one side, you have high quality content and high quality localizations for a couple of markets, and you still do the rest but you do it with a little bit less resources involved and see if that gets a little bit of traction. And ideally, you would want to serve inbound for any country. So if someone comes to you from a country that is not one of your core markets, who cares? It's good, it's customer. But the resource intense strategies should happen, and the high quality translations and localization should happen only for your core markets.
And with the international expansion, obviously, there's a lot of work that comes with it. And so, how can we balance internal teamwork without burning out the team in the process?
Yeah, I think setting the expectation right. Don't think that with AI, one person can have an output of 10 person. And I think strong processes, understanding, just make it easy for them to translate, to proofread, giving clear directions, and make sure that when using AI, there is a human in the loop in the right spot to just, improve also the quality of the work. I think if someone has a lot of work, but the output is good, it's less draining than the other way around.
Yeah. So to be realistic a little bit about the expectations and have maybe like process and tech in place, like a tech stack that is. Because I see like with the AI implementation, there's a lot of like still people, I say, copying things into ChatGPT and out of ChatGPT. That's a lot of manual process. Sometimes they don't even have like, let's say, a setup that is customized for the brand. So they need to, every single time, they have to either have like elaborate prompts that are still copy pasting into ChatGPT, or maybe they're like literally uploading every time, like files, reference files so it gets like the tone and.
Yeah, create strong templates helps, have clear processes in place, and set their expectations right. I think these are the main things.
And if you could like summarize your entire international expansion experience into 3 key advices, like 3 pieces of 3 tips that you will give to SaaS founders. This is for founders looking to expand into European markets. What would they be? Like the 3 tops, let's say, recommendations.
I think I would nail your market first. So make sure you are successful on your market first. This is something, it's super important. Second thing would be very clear about the next market that you want to prioritize. Set up a strategy. If it doesn't work, try to stick to it and try to understand why, rather than going after one market and then pivoting to another one and then another one. And so I think focus is really important. And then get as many insights. Do the research. I think it's super important. Get as many insights as you can. If it can be through a partner that is a strategic partner that knows the culture of the place, even better, and focus on that. I think these are my 3 advices.
And if you were to give like always 3 advice, but to fellow marketers, like what would they be? Again, around international expansion.
Sort of the same, I think. Do the research. This is a very obvious but important advice. Set the expectation clear for your team. I am really not a big fan of like pushing because AI or this because we have ChatGPT. Like understand what's the problem that we're solving. Of course, you're gonna solve it with AI, but I find it very annoying when people tell you to be faster, better because of AI. So don't do that. I think it drains energy for your team. And then the third one, prioritize one market. Focus on one market. If you have the budget to hire a native speaker or have a partner that it's in low code, that's always a big advantage.
Yeah, because unless you have enough, like, let's say, budget to hire like a person to assign to every single market, working on too many markets at the same time can be really very distracting, let's say.
Yeah, it's hard. You change contexts. It's hard to build templates. It's unless these markets are very similar. Like this is possible in Benelux for sure. But not even, because in some part of Belgium people speak French. Some part of Belgium people speak Dutch. Some part they speak Flemish. So unless the markets are very, very similar, you can do that. But yeah, ideally you would have one person for each, one native speaker for each country, but that's not always the case.
Yeah. And the like nailing your home market before moving on to other markets, that's you're not the first one on this podcast giving this advice, I think.
Really? Yeah.
It's wise, yeah.
It's also a very common mistake because you're like, oh, we're making this amount of revenue in the Netherlands. Now we're going to expand to Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. And then nothing happens. So I would always build a lot of trust in your home market and then try to, you can also start with one-on-one initiatives, like really do teams that don't scale in another market. Pick up the phone, call, give an offer to a big customer if you have the chance, with the proposal to do a case study in return. And you do it once, you do it 2 times, you do it 3 times, then you build a little bit that social proof that when someone comes to your website, they're like, oh, my neighbor is doing this, is using this software, or they're solving this problem that way. That's the best way to convince, I think.
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Nicola. I hope it was okay.
It was good. It was good.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Undertow. We help B2B SaaS companies grow in any language. Get in touch if you want to know more. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. If you want to support us, remember to give 5 stars to the podcast. See you next time.